One of the best things about the Gaggia Brera is just how simple it is to operate, not just in terms of switching between various settings like your bean strength or programming, but also in just brewing some of your favorite drinks. Now, we're a bit late in the afternoon and I am grateful for that because I am ready to brew some delicious espresso. So, let's get into it. As I mentioned, operating the Brera is incredibly straightforward, so we'll go ahead and start with the flashing button, which is the power button here. And the machine is powered on. Now, this is the default screen here, so we've got the center row of icons illuminated green, and then the bottom row as well. Now, just to go over what the screen means, because it's pretty straightforward, typically when one of the alerts across the top is illuminated, and that's going to be in red, that means that the machine requires your attention. So we have the water reservoir empty icon, the no beans icon, the general alert icon, which typically flashes in conjunction with one of these guys, and then the empty the drag drawer. Now, these green here correspond to different functions. So if we selected a specific function for the machine, only that icon would illuminate. And we have the steam, the brew coffee, the 2x brew, and the hot water icons. And then finally underneath we have the oft unused descaling alert and our current bean strength. Now, looking at the buttons on either side of the screen here, on the left side we have our espresso button and our lungo button, and we'll go into programming those in just a moment. Power, as we just saw here on the right, and then the aroma strength. So that corresponds with the number of beans being displayed on the screen. So the brew group in the Brera can dose between 7 to 10 grams of coffee, and as we push this, we'll see those beans change. So we have 1, 2, and then if you go off the map past 3, you see the scoop icon, which is how you know that you're ready to use pre-ground coffee brewing with the bypass doser, which I'll cover as well. We'll go ahead back to 3, which is my preferred setting. Now, the only other real piece of navigation or control that we have here on the Brera is the selector knob, which is the chromed knob right underneath the display. So there's a little line here which lines up with some of these icons on the panel. When it's in the upright position, that is the brewing position, which is where you'll be most often for producing espresso. So if we turn it to the left, we switch to steaming mode, and if we turn it to the right, we switch to hot water mode. So this is a really nice, very good tactile experience. I really like adjusting. There's a satisfying thunk and a click when you turn it. So that's a lot of fun. And yeah, I will be taking a closer look at that in a bit. But that's generally how you'd operate the Brera. Starting off, let's take a look at brewing a basic espresso. Now, this machine does have 5.5-inch spouts, which can accommodate tall mugs, but also are great for the smaller espresso cups. We'll go ahead though and pull the spouts down just to eliminate some splash distance here. And to brew an espresso, we're simply going to push the espresso button. Now, if this is the first time that you're operating the machine, your shots may not look as pretty as mine does, but I can give you a demo in just a moment of what your first shot might look like coming out of the machine. And just like that, the Brera can produce a crema-rich shot of espresso with just the push of a button. Now, if you're like me, a single shot of espresso might not be enough coffee. So let's take a look at the Lungo button here, but also we'll be taking a look at programming the machine to our desired volume. Fortunately, this is also incredibly simple. Both the espresso and the Lungo buttons can be programmed to your desired volume simply by pressing and holding that button before you brew. So we'll go ahead and do that now. And you can see the brew button is flashing now, the brew icon right there. And once your desired volume of liquid is reached, simply press that button again. Now the Brera will produce the same volume of coffee for the next time we push the Lungo button. And that's not just coffee, mind you, that is a nice cup of pressure brewed coffee with a good head of foam that cascades, as you can see during the brewing process. Really delicious and much better than you'd get from the drive-thru or from a traditional drip pot coffee maker. Now, as I mentioned before, the Brera does have the option to do a ×2 brew. So this is a unique feature among Gaggia espresso machines, which is that in most cases, any of the coffee drinks can be brewed twice simply by pushing the button 2 times in a row. Now, the ×2 brew light here, which has 2 cups, will be illuminated if you've done this successfully. Now, the unique thing, though, about how Gaggia does it is that they actually will grind and brew twice. There are some brands out there that will only double the amount of liquid water that's being passed through the coffee. So with the Gaggia, it's great because either A, if you've got a guest, for instance, who wants the same coffee as you and you want to make 2 of them, or B, if you really want an extra caffeinated shot or say an extra caffeinated cup of coffee, you could even cut the total liquid that you're dispensing and just have the machine double up on the brewed espresso. So let's go ahead and do a ×2 espresso so you can take a look at what that looks like. And just like that, we have 2 freshly brewed back-to-back espressos. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, your first shot that you brew with the Brera may not be the prettiest. Now, I'm going to go ahead and kind of fake those conditions to give you a sense for what's going on. Now, what's happening with your first grind is that the machine is learning the coffee and it's not really quite getting your dose exactly as it needs to be. So what's happening is the first shot that's brewed is actually being brewed with very little ground coffee. Now, I am a believer in the concept that seeing, of course, is believing. So I'm going to do my best to give you a approximation of what that's going to look like. So we'll use the bypass doser and some pre-ground here, and just go ahead and load a very small amount in, and we'll press brew. And as you can see, our foam, of course, is from the pressure brewing, but that looked a little bit like brown water. And by the time you get to your second or third shot, you'll find that the crema will really be shaping up quite nicely. Your flow will be good. So if your very first shot looks like this, I'd say toss it, and you can expect good things to come from there. Let's go ahead now and take a look at brewing with pre-ground coffee on the Brera. That's going to make use of the bypass doser, and so we'll use some pre-ground coffee and also our included scoop. Now, this scoop is important because the scoop itself is calibrated for the max dose in the brew group. Now, if you use something else, you can inaccurately dose, and what'll happen is if you use too much coffee, for example, the Brera will dump your shot because there's too much pressure in the group. You also should not compact coffee into this scoop for that exact same reason. Now, my technique is to simply take your ground coffee, get it shaken into the scoop to fill in any crevices, and you can go ahead with a knife and simply level off the scoop. And so it's important to note too that the coffee that you're using needs to be ground for espresso so that it's a suitable fineness for this machine. Now, in order to use the bypass doser to brew, we'll simply go ahead and press the aroma strength button until the scoop icon appears on the display. And then to load coffee into the bypass doser, simply open the hatch. We'll go ahead and get our scoop in here. I like to have it off to the side. And then you can just gently tap the top of the scoop to have the coffee fall into the chute. Now, there is a little chute that leads down into the group. We'll go ahead and push our button now and brew using pre-ground. Apart from following my perfect technique, the secret to your pre-ground success is going to come down to the quality of your coffee. Now, If you're using coffee that's sat in the cupboard for quite a while and you just haven't used it, you may find that the crema is weak and that your shots are a bit flat. That's primarily because pre-ground coffee loses its freshness much faster than whole beans. It's losing that CO2 that's the foundation of our crema. So especially if it's a decaf that you brew on occasion for guests, you should make sure that it's something fresh if you want to brew them some nice shots. But otherwise, it's completely possible to use pre-ground espresso to get very crema-rich shots like you're seeing right here.